Lord is blessed to see we had another beautiful day today. I mean, the weather was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the sky was blue with some scattered clouds around. Of course, the sun was out, and it really wasn't too hot. It was a great day to be outside, and for that we're grateful. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in this evening. I just want to come and talk for a couple of minutes. I haven't been doing a lot of lives, but I want to come in this evening because I saw really an interesting article by Miss Amelia Nicely, I believe is her name, and she's an excellent journalist, and I know she writes some things. It's sometimes I see West Virginia Watch, I think, and other times I see it in Mountain State Spotlight, and occasionally I see an article maybe it's from the Gazette Mail. But Amelia Nicely is an excellent writer, and I saw a piece. I'm pretty sure it was a piece that she had done. It's about the West Virginia school aid formula. And if you not saw that article, I strongly encourage you to read it. I do plan to post it on my Facebook page as soon as I finish up this evening. But it's an article by Miss Amelia Nicely, and what she's pointing out is how that the funding of public education it is derived from a formula. Now, that's the part of the funding that comes from the state Board of Education. And one of the key factors in that formula is the number of schools that are enrolled. See my good friend Dr. Dreamer Hyman, thanks for tuning in this evening. The way the school aid formula is devised is that it's kind of driven by the number of students that are enrolled in the public schools. And if my memory serves me correctly, they take the count in October of every year. So once they take the count, then that number of students is multiplied. Then some other factors goes into the equation, and they calculate how much money they're going to give to each county for them to distribute to each of the schools in that county based on the number of students that are enrolled. So now let me tell you what the problem with that is that we're seeing a steady decline in the number of students that are enrolled in the public schools in the state of West Virginia. And Ms. Nicely's article, she points out that at least 5,000 students have left the public schools in West Virginia since October of last year when the count was taken. And so that means that there will be, the school aid formula will be based on 5,000 fewer students. The problem with that is just because students leave a school to go to homeschool, private schools, um, uh, charter schools, or what have you, and I'll talk about that in a moment, it doesn't mean that the cost for educating the students that remain in that school goes down at the same rate um, as the number of schools leaving the school because there are certain fixed costs. The building doesn't get smaller just because students leave the school. The school buses don't get smaller. They normally don't make fewer school bus runs. The number of janitors they actually need to clean the school doesn't change. And not only that, as we are seeing an increase in the number of children that's enrolled in public schools that have special needs, whether it's educational special need, a mental health need, a physical need, and there are certain federal requirements, even though the federal government doesn't provide the funding to do it, the schools must make additional accommodation for children with special needs. Like in some classroom, uh, a child may be required, the school may be required to provide the child with a personal aid, right? Even though the federal government does not provide the funding to do that under the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So there are costs that a school continues to incur, even though there is attrition with children leaving the public schools. And so what we're moving toward is a severe defunding of public schools in the state of West Virginia. And as I said earlier, I'm going to post the article on my Facebook page. Someone may be able to find it now, and you can post it. I believe it's in Mountain State Justice, and you can post the article so people, excuse me, can see the link and read the article. But Amelia nicely does in-depth work, and she's talking to the state school board president, President Paul Hardesty. She's talking to an individual at the state level that's involved in uh, doing the calculations, for uh, the school and that type of thing. And so that's why I want you to read this article. For those who may be watching me on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page is Matthew J. Watts. It's just Matthew J. Watts Facebook. That's my Facebook page, Matthew J. Watts. And for those who are watching me on Facebook, my YouTube channel is just simply Pastor Watts YouTube. Pastor Watts YouTube. And so if you've never visited my YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that. Pastor Watts YouTube. We have a lot of videos that's posted out there, not just sermons, but a lot of speeches that I've given over the years and some educational things I've put together. And we'll continue to build that the YouTube uh, library. And, uh, and I'll be moving more to YouTube in coming months, and I'll explain to you the reason for that at a later time. But I'm talking about now what's happening in public school in West Virginia. And the article deals in great depth the fact that the school aid formula has not changed for 30 or 40 years. And therefore, there's less money coming into the schools, and it's going to severely handicap the schools in their attempt to provide, a high quality education for the students to remain in the public education. Uh, and so I want to talk about this because this is in effect a defunding of public education in West Virginia. That's what's happening, a defunding of public education. Uh, as of yesterday, there were 26,000 students that that were enrolled in either public school, private school, charter school, or some school other than, uh, 26,000 that enrolled somewhere other than public school. And that's at a price tag of $155 million dollars that will be leaving the public school system to provide education for these children in some other type setting. Now, I'm not personally opposed to alternative education. I'm not opposed to charter school, private schools, homeschooling, Christian schools. Um, I support the parents should have options. What I'm concerned about is that so much money has been taken away from the public schools that it is creating an inferior public school system. And the public schools will not be able to deliver the same quality of education that they've been able to deliver in the past. And the majority of children in West Virginia will be educated in the traditional public school, and an overwhelming majority of low income children, the a majority of them. So there are about 26,000 kids that are enrolled in something other than the public school, private, Christian, homeschool, what have you. And there are probably close to 220,000 kids, or 200 plus thousand kids that are enrolled in the public schools. And we need those schools to be as robust, to be as well funded. We need to deliver the best possible education we can because the majority of children are going to be educated in the public school. Now, what my concern is, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I don't think that I'm wrong. I think that this is a strategy to weaken the public school system, right? To weaken the public school system. It's a political strategy by the majority party in the state of West Virginia right now to weaken the public school system. And so doing it, it weakens the organized labor of the teachers associations and school personnel association. and that type of thing. And by weakening the public schools, what you create, and this may be intentional because I think they know that this is what's happening, you create an inferior uh, populace, a population of people that are undereducated, right? A larger percentage of people that are undereducated. And so if you create an undereducated mass of people, then it's easier to manipulate them, it's easier to control them politically, and to control them socially, and to control them economically. Because many of the people in these very rural areas, it's difficult for them to leave or to have a mass exodus from those communities because they don't have the education levels and the skill levels uh, that other places would want to recruit them and bring them there for their labor. So the people, they simply get stuck. And so if we create this undereducated and underskilled population of people in our state, it's going to be people that can be more easily manipulated, more easily deceived, and more easily controlled. Now, that might bode well for the ruling class, right? For the elite class of people, but it's not going to bode well for the majority of the rest of us, not merely the people at the lowest level of our social society and economics, but those of us who are hardworking middle class people, right? If people are undereducated, if they're underskilled, it means they're going to be underemployment, or it means they're going to be unemployed. If they're unemployed, that the entire tax burden then falls upon the working class. And as our tax codes is skewed more toward the wealthy and the elite, and we see right now this austerity taking place in West Virginia as the party that's in control continues to reduce state income taxes, therefore creating less revenue that is coming in to the state. This is a recipe for social, for economic, and for cultural disintegration. And people need to wake up and realize what is taking place. This is not a personal attack against anybody, but we have the people in the state round that is running the executive branch of government. The current governor and the people that he brought in with him to help him run the state attorney general's office, and now they helped him to run the state as the executive. They do not have long ties to the state of West Virginia. They do not have a devotion, a loyalty, a love, and appreciation for the state of West Virginia. And I would dare to say is that they're not going to remain here. Uh, with the current governor, if he wins another term, after his second term, I guarantee you he will be leaving the state of West Virginia to head to Washington, D.C., where he and his wife have practiced law and where there have been lobbyists, or head back to New Jersey or New York. And we're going to be left with the consequences of their bad policies. And the defunding of public education in the state of West Virginia is one of the worst political moves that could be made in terms of the long term viability, economic stability, community stability, family stability of our state. And people really need to wake up. They need to wake up and realize that there are people that are running this government and that are making the decisions uh, in terms of what's going to happen with public education. Now, I understand that public education is the largest part of our state budget, of the tax revenue that comes in. That's the price of having a society, right, where you can have a workforce that can do work to drive the economy. Uh, People have to be educated, and we are a low income state. And so public education is the genius, I believe, of our state and of this nation. And can it be improved? Yes, it can be improved. Does it need to be improved? Yes, does need to be improved. But the public education in our state, it's not a colossal failure. We're where we are now because we've had a public education system. We're able to maintain a state government. We're able to maintain county government and local governments. We're able to drive businesses and drive an economy because the overwhelming majority of people that are employed and that are working were educated in the public school system. This is a major political issue that the masses of people need to be paying attention to and to realize what is happening. Now, what are the places that's going to be hurt the most? The places that are going to be hurt the most by this defunding of public education are the most distressed areas, the most distressed communities. It's the southern West Virginia coal fields, where some of the lowest income people are, lowest labor force participation, distress, long term, systemic, pervasive, generational poverty that has existed, a place that is economically depressed, a place that has been uh, politically, socially, culturally, and economically exploited, a place that has been devastated in recent years by the oxycodone, oxycontin, and most recently the opioid crisis, right? Those communities are in serious trouble. They're in serious distress. Our population is in decline. That means the tax base is in decline. So these places are going to be hurt the most severely because they're going to have fewer resources to go toward educating the children in these counties. These people need to wake up. They need to wake up and be prepared to vote out of office those legislators that refuse to change the school aid formula, those legislators that refuse to provide additional funding to the public schools to make up for the money that's being lost because of the decline in population. They need to vote out of office those individuals that basically refuse to recognize that there is an education crisis in our state right now, and the answer to it is not just to take more money away from the school system and talk about how bad the school system is. It's going to leave more people behind. The people in the deep southern West Virginia counties are going to fall deeper, farther and farther behind. And it's going to result in the creation of something that we already have. There's already a permanent underclass in counties, particularly in southern West Virginia, and counties in central West Virginia. The people need to wake up. The legislature had an opportunity to address this problem during the past legislative session. They had an opportunity to talk about the school aid formula. They could have changed the school aid formula, even if they did it temporarily, knowing that more kids were being taken out of the public schools, therefore there'd be less money coming in. But they didn't. They left Charleston knowing that there was going to be a huge funding gap for public education. In Kanawha County alone, my friends, in Kanawha County, the capital county, I think they had to lay off 149 employees, school teachers, cooks, um, bus drivers, janitors. They had to lay these people off because they knew that next year they would have less money coming in than they had the previous year. This is the capital county that saw those type of layoffs. In Kanawha County, they have all but shut down the alternative schools. So the children that are the highest at risk, that's been suspended from their high schools and their middle schools, will no longer have the type of alternative educational opportunity that they've had in the past. They're going to be going to virtual education. And we know how that did not work for some of our better students during the COVID era. And now that's where we're moving the kids who are in virtual. And if they're not successful there, if they don't comply, then basically they will be suspended from the schools altogether. And then the parents will have to wait to next year to apply to get a Hope Scholarship so they can then take responsibility to homeschool their children. No one is talking about this. that we're getting ready to force the parents who don't necessarily want to homeschool their children, but some of the most at-risk kids that have been suspended from their home school will no longer have alternative education as an option. The parent will have no idea but to homeschool their children. This is an unprecedented crisis in the state of West Virginia. It's a crisis in public education. It's an intentional defunding of the public school system in the state that I predict will further exacerbate the problem and to perpetuate the creation of a permanent underclass of people in the state of West Virginia. And the only way out of this is that for the people to get registered to vote if they're not registered, and they be prepared to vote the people out. Don't let them tell you they're going to fix it in November if you reelect them again. No, the people that have been there this past year, those individuals, and I'm going to make it plain, it's really the Republican led legislature, because 91 members of the House of Delegates are Republicans, and 32 of the members of the Senate were Republicans. They had total control over the situation. And the majority of them, overwhelming majority of them, refused to deal with the issue of the school aid formula and making sure that the public schools were adequately funded for this coming school year while they were figuring out how to fund it and how the formula should be changed moving forward. This may be the social justice issue of our time, the social justice issues of our time. And the reason I say that, because the Constitution in the state of West Virginia says that the state will provide every child a free, thorough, and efficient education. That's almost verbatim. Education is to be free, it's to be thorough, it's to be efficient. And so to have a free education, someone has to pay for it, because there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And so it has to be paid for by the taxpayer. It has to be thorough. If it's going to be thorough, it has to be adequately funded. If it's going to be efficient, it has to be properly, professionally ran. And we have an education crisis. We're headed for a education free fall. And I'm not making this up. I'm going to post a newspaper article. Paul Hardesty, a former member of the West Virginia legislature, and the current president of the West Virginia State School Board. I want you to read his words. Paul Hardesty went as far to say it's a travesty that they didn't deal with this in the past legislative session. And he went on to say that the people may have no recourse but to sue the state of West Virginia for failing to fulfill its obligation to provide the children a thorough and efficient education. Right now, most people don't pay no attention to this because we in the youth football. We already talking about high school football. We're talking about middle school football. We're talking about AAU. We're talking about all this sports stuff. And while we're preoccupied with sports, right, our education system is in a economic free fall in terms of being adequately and sufficiently funded, and the quality of the education that our public school system is able to provide is going to diminish significantly. So I close by simply saying this. It's time to pay attention. As I said in previous posts, we can't recreate, celebrate, or party our way out of the crisis that we're in. It's going to require us to take become serious and curious about these serious issues. And the only way that we can address this is to mobilize people to realize that they've got to start voting in their own best interest. And so the people that have been championing this Hope Scholarship and that have been encouraging people to take their children out of public schools, right? That is the Republican Party. They have been championing the Hope Scholarship. They put $300 million in to fund Hope Scholarships. Um, and so that's close to 10%, probably 8% of the entire state school budget. That is significant. It's obvious that they want fewer kids going to public school. So the public school system is being weakened, it is being defunded, and it is de facto a crisis. Okay? And I see Shamika Park, she's posted something about the Hope Scholarship. You guys can check that link out. Um, and let me be clear. I'm not opposed to the Hope Scholarship. I think every parent, it's good that parents have options. And some parents don't want their children educated in the public school. And I'm not opposed to parents getting some assistance. I think it's close to $5,500 now that a parent can get if they apply for the Hope Scholarship, and then they can take that money and then they could go to a private school, a home school, uh, uh, charter school, or find some other type of public education. Uh, I guess the reason they pass is because it's free money for them to put their children where they want to go to school. Uh, yeah, that is correct, and like I say, I'm not opposed to that. But the majority of children, the majority of low income children, the majority of low middle income children, and the majority of middle income children are going to be in the public school system. Like I said, there are 26,000 kids in something other than public school, right? But there are probably at least 200,000, probably 220,000 kids that are in the public school system. So the masses have to be educated to a higher level because it's the masses that are needed basically to replenish the labor force and to help to drive the economy. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And so we can kind of it's not this or that. So the Hope Scholarship is passed, it's by law. The people can apply for it, and many people are applying for it. But we got to have a balance. How are we going to provide a high quality public education for the parents who want to send their children to the public school to be educated there and to enjoy the social environment and the social interaction that public education provides? That's the point I'm trying to make. And so let me bring it home, right? I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but when you bring it home, as I said earlier, Kanawha County School laid off 149 people. There are going to be fewer school counselors. There are going to be fewer child psychologists and social workers and attendance workers, fewer cooks, fewer janitors in the public school system. Mercy Snow is not going to shrink the size of the building, it's not going to shrink in size. And they still going to need a full staff of janitors to clean it, but they're going to have fewer janitors next year than they had this year. I'm trying to break this down so you guys can understand what's happening and why this is very, very important and why it's critical. I'm going to get more information. I'm going to talk specifically to some of the principals. Uh, and to see exactly what happened to them. Uh, it says this issue is minorities without meet a lot of these requirements due to unexcused absences, etc. If the money had been, I'm not quite sure, President Parks, if I'm understanding uh, exactly what the statement you were making at that making that. And I apologize for that. If you want to kind of restate it, I'll try to see if I can get a better understanding and maybe try uh, to respond on. Okay. Um, we got a lot of challenges, right? And I've tried to articulate them over the years. I've tried to try to bring to people's attention the major crisis with excessive school discipline and excessive school suspensions. I've got videos about it. I've written about it. it's a major problem. It's contributing to kids receiving less educational instruction. Therefore, they're falling down behind academically and they're being undereducated. Okay. Uh, so that's so there are minimum attendance requirements. Uh, yes, I mean, I mean, some people are taking their kids out of school, if this is what you're saying, to avoid the truancy issue. And some people have looked very closely into that, right? You take the kids out of school, therefore they know they don't fall under the truancy requirement. That can result in a parent and a child both being cited and possibly being even detained, i.e., incarcerated. Uh, and so, you know, so that's one of the issues that President Shamika Parks, with the, I think is touching on here. She's the president of a newly elected president of Charles Branch NAACP. That the prison pipeline is real, right? And it's going to take just us getting more involved as a community, trying to help to strengthen and stabilize our parents and trying to provide community-based mentoring programs and tutoring programs. Because I'm not just going to explain, I'm not just criticizing the schools. We have some children that are unruly and they're undisciplined and they're very disruptive, and we know that for a fact. But we still got to hang in there with them. We got to figure out how to educate them because it's in our best interest to get them educated. Because if not, we're going to pay for them to be detained in juvenile detention facilities and then graduating, as President Parks points out, and move from the school to the prison pipeline. So we'll come back, and talk a little bit more about some of these issues. But what I want to do tonight, and I appreciate your comments, President Parks, is to bring to everybody's attention there's a crisis in public education. One thing that's contributing to this crisis is the amount of money that is being removed from public education because people are taking their children out, and it's going to create a real dearth of resources for the schools, and the administration is trying to educate the children that remain in public school. That's real. Second one is the school suspension, the school discipline, the school absenteeism. It's a major problem. The schools cannot fix that by themselves. And it is a top priority issue that as ministers, as community-based organizations, as civil rights organizations, as fraternities, as lodges, as sororities, as people that got education, got some resources, got some skills, we have got to come together, not just to talk, not just to celebrate. We got to come together and we got to write checks and we've got to raise funds that we control. And we've got to run and operate Saturday schools, after school tutoring and mentoring, character, leadership development. Uh, we've got to also help our kids develop the type of social skills they need, conflict resolution skills they need. We got a problem, and I'm going to sign off here in a minute. We got a problem. I live on a street, and I'm getting ready to go home now. I'm still at my church. I guarantee you there are middle school age kids and a few elementary school age kids that are out right now on my street, and it's 10:08. But if it was a school night, some of them would still be out there on a school night, they got school the next day. We got internal problems, right? And we just got to work harder, right, to try to connect with parents, provide them support, not to browbeat them, not to beat them down, not to try to encourage them, but they need to be challenged to realize, right, their children's future way in the balance. And if they got to do all that they can do to discipline, to get under control, and then they got to get the help that's available to them for their children. We'll talk more about this in coming days. I'm going to post this article as soon as I sign off here on my Facebook page. I pin it to the top of the page so you can see the newspaper article that I'm referencing that I think was today. I think it was in Mountain State Justice by Miss Amelia Nicely, talking about this education crisis. And you can see she's interviewing the people involved in the system, right? the state school board president, the vice superintendent or the deputy superintendent of the state school board, the person that's over the finances, they're all trying to sound the alarm and say we're headed for an economic cliff. All right. Um, I would have to check on that, uh, President Parks. I'm not sure. There may be. I'm being honest with you. Now, I've not read the requirements of the Hope Scholarship uh, lately. So they may have changed that because in the beginning uh, there was not um, a criteria about absences or unattended. They may have changed that to now a child cannot have had excessive absences and still get the Hope Scholarship. But I will take the time tomorrow to pull that up and see what I can find, and I will post it on it. In coming in coming posts, one of the conversations I want to have President Parks, and maybe we can get Black by God to help us with that, is to maybe have a Zoom to look at, several of the major education challenges, but also to talk about what is it that we can do. And that's where I'm saying that we have to move, right? Um, the public school system is not going to change very much. They're going to have less resources than what they've had in the past. As I said before, less counselors, less teachers' aides, less psychiatrists, less psychologists, less professional people to help with the children. So if they have less, they're going to be doing less. We've got to build capacity in our community. And the way to build capacity is that we have to come together and we got to take some of our money and create a fund to help augment what our kids are getting in school. We've got to help to fund after school programs, summer academic enrichment programs, tutor and mentoring programs, parenting programs for the parents, conflict uh, resolution types of programs, right? Helping kids develop the social skills that they need, anger management type programs. We got to promote mental health and wellness. We got a mental health crisis in our community. We don't want to talk about it, right? But we do. It exists. A mental health crisis exists. And a lot of our children have suffered from severe trauma. They have been traumatized and they're acted out in school. A lot of them, were traumatized while they were in their mother's womb. A lot of them were exposed to drugs, narcotics, while they're in their mother's womb, and it's affected their brains and the development of the brain. These things are just real. The violence that we see happening in our community, violence in our homes, domestic violence taking place, these things are all having an impact on our children. If you think I'm exaggerating, go to any elementary school, go to Mercy Snow, go to Edgewood. At Edgewood, they have a program, I think it's called the Chance Program. It's a school within a school. It's for the kids, elementary age kids that are so disruptive that they have to be kept in a different environment with mental health experts, psychiatrists, and so forth. Ask a principal. Give me an idea. How many kids in your school do you have to dispense medication to every day? You'll be surprised at how many of our children are on this medication. We have a mental health crisis in our community. All these young people, as early as late elementary, middle school, high school, right? They're already self-medicating with marijuana, alcohol, and some of them even some other drugs. That is a mental health crisis when people start self-medicating just to cope with life. It's a reality. We have a lot of kids that are depressed, a lot of children that are depressed, a lot of parents that's depressed. And so sometimes parents are so overwhelmed, they just giving up. Saying, I can't do nothing with them. I'm trying to work, I'm trying to cook, I'm trying to keep a roof over their head, and they're just bad. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. And few people want to tell the truth about where we are. We are disproportionately represented everywhere something is bad. Most people are not even aware there are 609 children in the child foster care system in Kanawha County, right? In Kanawha County, over 600 some kids in the child foster care system. Over 180 of them are black. We're disproportionately overrepresented in the child foster care system, and there are not that many black child foster care parents. That's another conversation we need to have. Over 700 children appear before a juvenile judge or referee or probation officer in Kanawha County every year, over 700. And we're disproportionately represented there. I think the last time I looked, roughly 2,000 children are suspended from school in Kanawha County each year. And if memory serves me correctly, nearly 500 of them are black. So that means that, we don't make up about 10% of the public school system in Kanawha County, but we're 20% of the kids that are suspended. We're over suspended, disproportionately suspended, disproportionately disciplined, disproportionately in the child foster care system, disproportionately in the juvenile justice system. And we're disproportionately represented in the regional jail system and in the prisons. All right? This crisis is real. Right? We're going to continue the conversation about it in coming weeks. But right now, I want you to pay attention and read this article about the funding challenges being placed by public education. And we'll come back and unpack some of these other topics in future posts. Over time, I'm meant to be 30 minutes. I'm at 41, but thank you guys for your time. You guys have a great evening. Be encouraged despite all the challenge. Be encouraged, and I want to congratulate again the President Shamika Parks, the Charles Metz NAACP. They had an excellent event to kick off Juneteenth a couple of weeks ago. Congratulate the Juneteenth committee. They had an incredible event with Dr. Michael Eric Dawson at the Civic Center Coliseum, and an incredible event the following day um, downtown at Slack Plaza. And so, what I'm suggesting now, guys, we've celebrated. I know we're gonna celebrate again in another week or so with the Fourth of July, and we should. But we've got to get curious about serious stuff, and we got to start having conversations and then creating an action plan as to what we're going to do moving forward. And education is one of those areas we need to focus. You guys be blessed, be encouraged, get some rest, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.